people in. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today in my bi-weekly workshop webinar series. If you don't know me, my name is Renee Roberts. I am a registered health and functional nutrition and vitality coach and founder of Nourish to Live RX, my company. And I help you sleep better. And I've been doing these workshops for a better part of a year now. So thank you for joining. I see people streaming in. Welcome, Christopher. Welcome, Sarah, Tina. Thanks for joining. We are live on Facebook and we'll get started. Before I introduce my guest speaker for the evening, I just want to go through a few logistics. If you want to ask questions, feel free to pop in a question in the chat anytime during the session, or you can go into the Q&A box as well. Tonight's session is going to be more of a conversation style. There will be no slides or anything, so feel free to pop in and ask anything you want during the session. You can also come on audio, just raise your hand and I'll bring you on audio so you can ask question live if you'd like. And let me bring up some information about our guest speaker, Rachel Greb. Rachel is going to talk to us about fierce inner growth. And she has a passion for empowering women and helping them find their unique voice. She believes that all women are worthy and deserving of self-love and healthy relationships. So Rachel values making this journey accessible and fun so that her clients can achieve their highest potential. Her own journey of self-work makes her an open, understanding, and supportive coach. And it's all about fierce inner growth. So welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. So what I'll do is, why don't you just tell us a little bit about, I told you, I kind of said your bio, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do and what you do day to day.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Rachel and I am the owner and founder of FIG Life Coaching. Just a little background of why it's called FIG, because it all does all go together. One, FIG was my mom's initials. So, and my mom, when I was younger, always taught me to color outside the lines, which used to get me in a bit of trouble. But so it was a nod to her when I started this business. The fig as a fruit, as I was starting to research it more, is a sign of abundance, and it has the flower on the inside. So it's really unique in that way that it doesn't show the flower, which everyone thinks is the beautiful part on the outside, it keeps it inside. And which then from there became fierce inner growth. So that's how Fierce Inner Growth came about, the name. And prior to this business, I was the co-founder of a girl, sorry, there was a fly. I was the co-founder of a girl empowerment group that became a nonprofit. And I used to run or co-run yoga and group therapy with a psychologist. And that was a group for girls, mostly around body image and some self-harm, disordered eating, and topics such as that. And then it kind of transitioned into an LGBTQ friendly group. And we had a lot of people who were either in the midst of transitioning or questioning. So it was a really interesting group. Right before COVID, I left my nonprofit and for different reasons. And I thought I knew what I was going to be doing. And during this whole time when I was thinking about it, the one thing I missed is I loved working with girls, but there was another group of things like that I really couldn't talk about as much was relationships, which was like career paths. Like we could talk about it a little bit with high school students, but it wasn't the same kind of thing. I couldn't share my story as much because I had some trauma and it wasn't appropriate to share with kids. And also the idea of women and sexuality, you know, that was something that I really wanted, I was missing talking about. So I decided to do my health and life coach certification. And the focus has become more and more towards women and empowerment. I do have male clients as well, but my focus is female clients. My clients are usually around mid-20s and above. And it's all about like really getting to know yourself, because there's women in different parts of their lives. We lose our voice. We lose who we are, either because of trauma, because if you're raising families, some things get pushed aside. If at your job, there may be things, and a lot of people lose their voice and lose their essence of who they are, and it's forgotten. And because of that, relationships suffer. You suffer, you don't have that really good base point of who you are and what you want. And so therefore it's hard to move forward when you don't have that knowledge anymore, when you're so unsure of yourself. So that's what I focus on. And it's really because of my own journey is where it started. And when I look back at why I want to do this, I grew up in a wonderful family. So you would think, oh, everything is great. But I got my period when I was 9, which is extremely young, and all my friends were boys. So my life changed pretty quickly because I was no longer seen as one of the guys. I was suddenly a very different person. And because of that, that caused a lot of body image issues and self-esteem issues. So, that piles on. And later it became sexual assault and disordered eating. And in between there, I had a long bout of suffering from endometriosis and couldn't do anything for years. So things pile up. I start to lose myself. I got really quiet, when doctors are telling you your pain's in your head, or when people are like, you don't have disordered eating, or they didn't really understand my disordered eating because I didn't look what people think of looks like an anorexic looks like, but I wasn't eating. And then that led me to a toxic relationship with an addict for a really long time. And I got quieter because I was always walking on eggshells because I didn't want to disturb him. I wanted to make sure he was okay, he was safe. Because, there was always threats of suicide or all kinds of things. So when I finally stepped away from all that, and I was like, wow, I used to be so independent and so fiercely me, and I lost all of that. So I did a lot of work on myself through that, and that helped change me so much. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people along this path.
Awesome. So what's a common theme then for people that you work with? Are there any takeaways that I guess are common that would resonate with some of us that are listening?
A lot of the women I work with don't know how to take the next step or don't know how to speak up for themselves. There's a lot of fear about how to communicate. So we work a lot around the belief in themselves, where that self-image has really been worn down throughout the years. So by creating this list of looking at all the things that we are, not all the things that we're not, can really help start to shift some of that. And that goes once you can start that shift, that mindset shift back to you, and being okay to focus on you and figuring out who you are again, and taking away the negative stories and learning how to change and reframe. It's really about reframing those stories. That shifts not only your self-esteem and how you feel, but it goes into how you show up at work, how you show up for a partner, how you show up for your friends. So creating new stories, creating stories that are more positive, and really reframing the old stories. And one of the biggest things too that a lot of the women I work with have an issue with, and it's a problem for a lot of people, is setting boundaries for themselves and then keeping those boundaries. It's a common theme to say yes to a lot of things, to overschedule yourself, to make plans you might not want to make, and not having that boundary, and then feeling really resentful to yourself and to others. So that's really a big thing. So I do work a lot on mindset and reframing and boundaries. And then along those same lines, with that, what I've noticed, I've started working a lot more on my clients with sex coaching as well. And a lot of the women I work with really don't know themselves. You know, they don't, they've given up part of pleasure in themselves throughout the year. So it's really about relearning like who you are, what makes you happy, what makes you feel good, and how can you voice that.
Interesting. So what does a typical person, when they come to you, how do I ask this question? They come to you because they are coming out of maybe a traumatic relationship, or they just have self-esteem issues, or
It's a lot of both. It is either a lot of it has, there have been traumatic relationships, toxic relationships, and they're lost. When you've lived in a toxic relationship for so long, it's like you're a ghost of a person coming out of it, right? Like you have to really rebuild everything. So that affects your self-esteem. So a lot of times people might come in thinking like, I'm just not feeling good about myself, or I'm not, you know, like the way my body looks right now. And when we start diving into it more, it's like, oh, also you were in a toxic relationship and this is how this person was talking to you and telling you that you're making you feel like you're nothing. So it is a lot of self-esteem. And along the same lines, like when that happens too, it's like, and my career is not going anywhere. They all kind of go together, because when you're not feeling, when you don't have that feeling of you, and not the you that you think other people think you should be, you know, the real you, when you don't have that feeling of the real you, and you don't have that fierceness and that drive to move forward, you're stuck in so many aspects of your life. So it's a self-esteem, it's a body image, and it just keeps you stuck, you know. So most women have it, it's like they feel stuck, they feel lost. And I hear a lot of times like, I don't even know who I am.
okay. I was just about to ask that. So how do you know, like, what are some of the signs of low self-esteem issues or self-confidence issues?
So some things could be, listen, how are you talking to yourself? Are you always looking at the negative parts of yourself? Are you always berating yourself because something didn't go the way you thought it was supposed to go? Or another thing is like, are you hiding? Like, are you canceling plans? Are you not trying to meet new people? Are you covering up with, like, sometimes people, you can tell by the way they dress, is that you're wearing really baggy clothing. Some people do the opposite. They'll wear very provocative clothing just to try and get some attention from themselves, because that's how they feel like, you know, that happens. And I will answer that in just a second. Great question. Have you noticed like you're not trying to move forward at work? You know, are you just stuck? So there's a lot of those. It's that like not knowing how to move forward. And it can be, and it's interesting because who asked that question?
Chris, and it only came to us. So the question is, assuming this can be a long process, how do you get your clients to work through what has happened to them? Do they need to work through their issues first, or is that what you do?
Okay, so I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to go into a deep dive of like your past history. I mean, it is important, but it is about moving forward, but you do have to heal some of the past. So we do work on forgiveness of the past, not forgiving other people, but forgiving yourself, you know, along the way. It can be a long process. Some people, it's like very quickly move forward through these things. You don't, and I do work with people who are both in therapy and work with me alongside each other. I have people that feel like they need to wait. And I feel like, you know what, if you're in trauma and you're feeling stuck or you're feeling lost, start working on it now. And the more we can look at actions to move forward and forgive the past, because I don't, you know, it's not a childhood trauma and all that. Yes, it's going to come up and we're going to talk about it. But then instead of like looking at that and being like, letting that define us and be like, you know what, how can we take that situation and move forward from it? How can we forgive that? And also how can we take that and what can we have learned from that? Like, okay, I know I can now set a boundary. No, if I look at how I was treated as a child and there was trauma around that, I know that I need to have boundaries around how people talk to me or certain people that I'm around. So that's a way to keep it moving forward and healing it in a different way, but keeping the action steps going. So keeping on moving forward. And with my clients, because, you know, we see each other usually about once a week. I mean, Yeah, some clients go, what is every other week? Is that bi-weekly? I get so confused with those words. I think that's bi-weekly.
Every other week is bi-weekly.
Yeah, okay, I feel like it, yeah. So, if I don't see my client every week, we check in throughout the week. My clients will text me updates. I will text and check up on them. And if there's an emergency, I will offer, like, if you just need a quick 5 minutes of my time, that's cool. If you need another session in between to work or something, we can do that as well. But so the process is really about like moving it forward and how we can change the mindset around things and how we can, instead of sitting always and tornadoing an old thought, how do we get out of that tornado and move forward in a way that's healthy? Did that answer your question? Is there?
We'll see if
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So what about confidence issues? Are there things that you can talk about or tips that you can provide on boosting confidence?
Yes.
Is that the same as self-esteem? I don't know. Is it?
I mean, it can. I mean, you have to have some self-esteem to have confidence, right? But you can have really good self-esteem and feel not as confident in certain areas. So, building confidence, a lot of it is it's a mindset. It's how you talk to yourself. And so, like, pep talks to yourself are fantastic. I do sticky note affirmations. Sometimes I have them all over the place as a reminder. But then also remembering, like, with confidence, you have to remember that mistakes are going to happen. So to learn how to be okay with falling, because in the falling is where the biggest learning happens. Like when things are easy, if you're like, I'm just going to walk through life easy and that's what's going to make me confident. No, there's no learning in that. The learning is in the falls, the mistakes, the missteps, the having to reroute and try again. So by being okay with that, that can build confidence. Sometimes too, like if let's say it's giving a speech in front of people and you're like, that's something I'm not confident about. So to have an anchor, whether it's something in your pocket or a ring you can fiddle. Sometimes if I'm nervous, I'll have like a crystal or something I can play with or a pen. I have things all around me. So, and I do fidget with my hands a lot. But it's really a lot about the self-talk, because you can really talk yourself out of confidence quickly, right? If you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? What did I say? Or do they like me? It's more, do you like yourself, right? That's what's going to build the confidence. And something that I tell a lot of my clients, which someone actually said to me, which helped me look at things differently and why it's so important how we speak to ourselves. I was with my friend and I was being pretty down on myself. This was right after I left my nonprofit, I think, and I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. And she just turned to me and said, don't talk to my friend that way. And it just hit me like, oh, right. Like I would never speak to one of my friends the way that I speak to myself sometimes, right? So it's remembering that too, and having that, like walking around with that kind of confidence and like keeping that story going. Also, just the way you sit and stand, if you're sitting all slouched and closed off, that's that you're not going to feel as confident. So faking it, like sitting up really straight, bringing your shoulders up and then back and relaxing them, chin back slightly. And noticing if your tongue is stuck to the roof of your mouth, like letting that relax. Noticing if your hands are tight. By being able to breathe and lower like let everything kind of calm down, that will help as well.
Awesome.
And mirror talk, which can feel so awkward. But talking to yourself in the mirror is fantastic. Giving yourself a pep talk, looking at yourself, saying kind things to yourself. Awkward feeling at first, but it can really help build that self-esteem and confidence.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I could do that, but
it's hard. You're like, it's easy sometimes like read a piece of paper and do these affirmations and say these things. And also like you can create stories, like the best outcome stories, and read them like visualizations, like this is what's going to happen today. And it's going to be, and you write this whole thing out. That can feel a lot easier, but to have to look at yourself and say those things is hard and awkward.
Yeah. And I know there's a thing too, as a coach as well, that there are things you can do, and I don't know if you do this as well, but it just dawned on me that you can put yourself in your shoes in a future self, if that makes sense. Like think of yourself in the future, but actually visualize yourself as that person in the future.
Yes, visually, yeah. As a person, how you want to be, like where you want to be going, and to visualize. And sometimes it's good to have like a writing of it, or even if you like talk it out to yourself and you voice record it, you can re-listen to it.
Okay.
So then you have that. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes like I don't want to hear my own voice, but it's good to rehear that. But yeah, to create that story of the good outcome of where you want to be going. Because if you're always thinking like, if your lack of self-esteem and your lack of confidence is always saying, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to move forward. I can't do this. Guess what? You can't, because you've made up your mind. If you say I can, it doesn't mean everything's going to happen exactly the way you want it to, but you're keeping that option open. Mm-hmm. So that I can't right away shut everything down.
Yeah, and I think that helps your mindset as well, because if you have that negative tone, you're talking in a negative way, it's going to affect your mindset for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you were talking, one of the things that I thought of, I didn't want to interrupt though, is when you were saying how you sit, how you present yourself. I've done so many like workshops and sessions now that and I've taken courses on how to speak and how that, and they always talk about the power pose and stuff. And I think it popped into my head because I just think of standing like Wonder Woman. And,
yes, and you're supposed to do it for 2 minutes. I've done it when I had my girls group, and it's really hard to do for 2 minutes. But it's powerful. And as you said that, I saw someone asked about breathing techniques. And yes, I'm also a yoga teacher, and I was a special ed teacher. I had a lot of different career paths. Not really a lot. They all go together. They're all teaching people. And my master's research was on yoga for kids with special needs. So someone had asked about breathing. Breathing is so important. So I work on a lot of breathing techniques with my clients. I also talk fast. So like, I know for me, I have to really focus on my breathing because I get really excited quickly. And my breathing, the faster my breathing gets, the faster I talk. And then, that continues. So yes, I work a lot on breathing. The tongue, releasing the tongue from the roof of your mouth is part of that breathing technique. I also work on a lot of breathing techniques with my clients with sex coaching when we're dealing with things with pleasure. And there's a lot of aspects with breathing and mindfulness and staying present.
Okay. So, so it sounds like you have a huge type, I don't even want to call it a niche. I don't even know. It sounds like you actually work with various types of people. If you're doing like the sex coaching and maybe self-esteem and trauma and all that. So
it all, because for me, I mean, a lot of it all goes together. Like if you're coming from trauma, if you're coming from a toxic relationship, there's going to be issues of self-esteem. There's going to be issues of not knowing who you are anymore, of losing yourself. There's going to be issues around sex. So it's like all different ways of going about one thing. And there's oftentimes, like if someone comes to me as a client and it's about confidence, it turns out, like as we start talking, okay, well, I'm feeling unconfident. I'm really feeling unconfident, like in my job and in this, but also I'm not feeling confident with my partner. I'm not feeling confident asking for things with my partner. And so they really tie together. And I don't know if it's because I'm so open about talking about those things that people feel really comfortable, and it opens up that conversation. And other clients, I've worked with clients who come to me as having issues with their partner, or their partner was interested in an open relationship, and we brought it back to them. And with that, it's like a situation like that, that's what they came for, was like wanting to talk about this issue or this idea of an open relationship, and do they feel okay with it, and how can they kind of either make it work or not make it work for them. But what it turned out as we started working together is, okay, but that's what your partner wants. Where are you? Where's your fierceness? Where's your voice? Where's your power in this? Because there are two people have to agree, two of you have to agree with it and be on the same page if that's what you want. That's definitely not for everybody, right? But if that's for your relationship, if that would work, but it has to be both of your voices. And so what this person realized was like, they came in, they thought for their partner, but what they realized like through the whole thing that they didn't have a sense of themselves anymore. They were the mother, the person working, the expectations in the bedroom, and they were forgotten about. So that's where it kind of started. And before I started coaching, I had thought about doing sex coaching, and I was like, no, I don't know. Maybe I'll just do work on relationships. But I feel like if you keep out the sex part, if you're not comfortable talking about, if you're wanting to have a strong relationship and you're not comfortable, one, knowing what gives you pleasure, if you're not comfortable communicating to your partner your needs, then there's a whole piece of your relationship that's not going to work, and there's a whole piece of you that's missing.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. There's a question that came through from Tina. She's asking, do you recommend your clients to use breathing exercises to calm yourself?
Yes, and that was the one I was just answering a little bit before. Yes, okay. breathing exercises, and also notice like the tongue to the roof of the mouth is a big one, because if your tongue is stuck in the roof of the mouth, you can't relax and breathe. Notice also like your hands. If you start to notice your hands clench, relax them. Besides breathing, there's also soft touch, and this goes into like a day-to-day thing. This can also go into like things for self-pleasure, but doing like these little circle movements, finding one that works for you, not pressing together, but a really soft movement is so calming. You can do if this doesn't feel good to you out, like for some reason, you can do it on your leg, through like over your pants even, and do soft circles. And that's a way right away to calm you, to self-soothe. Touch and breath together are so great for self-soothing. And as a yoga teacher, we're taught, breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, and you breathe from the bottom up, and then you want to hold it and try to relax, which is a great breath to relax. If you're using breath to work on things like self-pleasure, then it's a breathing in through your nose, a hold, and breathing out through your mouth. And the breathing out through your mouth gives you a sensation throughout your whole body, as well as calming.
Okay. Interesting. I had something. Oh, the one other thing that I think may work well too is just doing a mind-body scan. Because if you feel that you're tense, you can then just do a body scan, start at the top of your head, go down. And then you'll find what parts of your body are actually tense. I do that a lot at night, and that's one of my tips for people with sleeping issues, is that if you wake during the night, or if you have trouble sleeping, because your mind is racing, or you're thinking of things, you can then start doing that, because it focuses your mind as well on your body, yourself, and not other issues or things going on around you.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you say that, when you're like at night, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I could be doing, because my sleep is terrible. And I teach relaxation techniques, but as you know, we don't always practice our.
No.
Yeah, the idea behind the idea of like being fierce in your growth is like, one is really, and that's the thing, is getting to know all parts of yourself. And the way that I coach is like, I want it to be fun. I mean, it's hard work too. Like there's often tears, there's a lot of things that come up. We get very, but it also is, there's some fun to it, right? I want it to be accessible to other people. I want people to know that they can feel comfortable telling me anything. It's not a judgment zone. Obviously, if there's some kind of like self-harm or something going on, then I have to, there's other avenues that we have to discuss, but that there's no judgment. It's confidential, that we can talk about whatever. within boundaries, right? Like there are some things that I get called for that that's not what I do. But also like I want people to remember that change is messy, you know, like having this fear-centered growth and having your like that flower, that beauty on the inside really come out. It's not a pretty, I think of it like my favorite thing is sprinkles. It's not all sprinkles and glitter and all that stuff. It's messy. And oftentimes like we try something and then it works for a while and then it doesn't. And we have to go down and try something different. Or after there's, you know, peaks of during our time together where you're going to have a week where your self-sabotaging behaviors take over, and that's okay. So to still show up. Mistakes are important. I really believe that mistakes are important, and being open and sharing those mistakes so that then we can figure out better ways to move forward and to be open and to be okay with the mess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So question about, I got to go back to the whole, this not sex therapy, but the sex thing. So when you work with people, are you working, have you worked with both, or do you just work with somebody like with like a woman that is having issues and not, you know, not being able to explain, or, you know, explain is not the right word, but you know,
right? Yeah.
Or do you work with both? Have you done that in the past?
With couples to work with both of it.
Yeah.
So I just got even darker. Sorry. So I was going to start working a little bit with couples at one point and seeing them separately and then together. But that's what it was going to happen with one potential client. They'd asked if I would see both parts. I don't. I work. I have one client who's now, we've touched on it a little bit, but I work with a woman, and then it's like, you know what? Because it's about her first, right? The focus needs to be on her, and then there's exercises that she can choose to bring in with her partner if they want to.
Okay.
Or it's you know, some partner, or if it's like, how do I even have a discussion? Like, how do I even talk to my partner? And
well,
then
that's what I was going to say. Is that how what you do, is help her discuss, like help her voice opinion?
Yeah, so it's helping, right? It's helping voice opinion. And sometimes, you know, like if a woman for so long, like wasn't thought about as someone who was, a lot of women that I've worked with feel like they're the ones who have to give pleasure all the time. Like it's about the male, and they're, you know, it's not as much about them. It's making sure their partner is enjoying it. And I mean, there's a lot more faking with women, right? So some women don't even know. They're like, I don't even know what I like. So then it becomes like, okay, how do we figure out what you like first? Before you can even talk to somebody about your needs, like, what are your needs? Like, what do you like? Is there something that you've always wanted to try that you were afraid to explore? And then how do you have that conversation? Okay. And if you want more pleasure from your partner, but you don't know what you like, how do you ask for that, right? Like, if they're like, you're like, I want more pleasure, like, okay, what does that mean? And you're like, I have no idea. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. So being able to explore things and then learning how to have that conversation.
Awesome. So we had another question come in from Tina. Would you recommend people to look inwards so you can find triggers?
I need a little more explanation. Do you mean so we can figure out what your triggers are so that we can move past them or work through them?
Let's see if
it is a,
let's see what she says.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. You do need to, learning what your triggers are very important. So there is a lot of inner work about that. And then once you know what they are, or once you start to discover triggers more, it's like, what do you do with them? How do you create boundaries for yourself? Because some things are going to be a trigger, and you need to have a boundary so to protect yourself. Or another option is like, there are ways of like, how can I work through that so I can have a full life, if it's a trigger that affects, that really affects you. And how do or if it's a trigger I can't escape necessarily, like maybe it's someone you have to work with, and every time they say something, it brings back memories. Like, how do I create a boundary of safety for myself in that time? How do I get stronger in myself so that I can move forward, and not sit in the trigger? And again, like, not let it take over your whole life. But that's where boundaries really come into play, and realizing, like, once you look inward and you grow that inner part and you get stronger and stronger in your belief in yourself and your knowledge and your power of yourself, even if you get stronger about how you control a trigger or how you walk away or create a boundary, right? Because you're not gonna, the more, there's a word that I keep forgetting, but that I can't think of, but the more rooted you are in self and in your fierceness and your you-ness, those boundaries are going to become a lot easier, because you're not going to, those things are not going to be okay for you, right? You're going to have really strong boundaries. Those things that trigger you start to move away, because you have so much belief and you know yourself. And you will notice, like, oftentimes when you start working on those things too, some of the things that used to trigger you, sometimes they don't, because you've created boundaries and you understand yourself more. Also, some people, you just like slide away from your life because suddenly because sometimes you create boundaries and there's pushback and people don't like it. If you've been doing things one way for so long, and then you create a boundary and they're like, oh, what is she doing, right? And they try and fight back about it. And if you're like, no, this is my strong boundary because that triggers me and I can't have this, some of those people kind of disappear. But also there's a higher level of person that you accept into your life.
Yeah.
Same thing with relationships. Like when you hear people say, like, who are dating, like, oh my God, I always date the same guy. Is it that every guy is the same, or have you not created boundaries? And what's triggering you about this person? Or one thing is like, why are you attracted to the same thing and you haven't changed? But also, like, what is it triggering you to let these, to allow that to happen, kind of thing.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions. I think I
Okay.
asked. I wanted to ask, does anybody have any questions for Rachel? If so, type in the chat, raise your hand, feel free to jump on.
Yeah, if anyone wants to do an audio, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah. So,
and also, if you do have questions, but you're like, I don't feel comfortable talking about these, asking on this format, or I don't want to, or publicly, or I'm not sure how to put it into words, you can always email me, DM me, and ask me the questions directly.
I was just going to say, how can people get in touch with you?
And also, so my website is figlifecoaching.com. My Instagram is figlifecoaching. That's where most of the two places I'll be most of the time. I do have my Facebook page is mostly, my Instagram stuff, a little bit on TikTok, but Instagram and my website would be the two biggest places you can find me. Also on Facebook, if you go to my personal, it's Rachel Greb, Greb. You can DM me there. Side note, I'm about to have my 1-year birthday of Fig, which is really exciting. And because of that, starting tomorrow, so you're the first to hear about it, there will be a giveaway happening. So I'm starting some mini sessions, meaning that I'm creating a package where instead of it being 45 minutes to an hour, 45-minute sessions, it's about 30-minute sessions. So for people that, don't feel like that's too much time, 45 minutes feels like a lot to some people when they first start working with a coach, like, how am I going to sit on the phone or a video for 45 minutes? And sometimes around relationships and sex coaching, it feels more comfortable when people have a shorter time, because then they can work on things on their own and it gives them some kind of space. So it's going to be a package of 30-minute sessions that I'll be giving away.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. And they can find that on your website and Instagram, I'm assuming?
That will be on Instagram. Starting the giveaway will be live tomorrow. It'll be on a post tomorrow, and I'll be going for a week.
Okay. And I'll send out your information to everybody that registered.
Thank you.
So they have your info. And of course, I'll send out the replay and everything tomorrow for everyone as well. If there are not any more questions, we can wrap this up. I don't see any coming through, so I do want to thank everybody again for
Yes,
joining.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel, for joining. Thank you to all the attendees who attended. And we have another session coming up in 2 weeks. I hope you can join, but I'll send all that information out through email. And I think that's it. So I'll let everybody go and enjoy their evening. Have a great evening, everyone.
Have a great night.
Okay, bye.
Bye.